The aim of this presentation was to look into handedness, how left-handed and footed players are overrepresented in interactive sport, and what future research can be done to have a clear understanding on what makes a person left-handed. Firstly, handedness can be described as the dominance of one hand over the other, and how there is an unequal distribution of fine motor skills between the left and the right hands. Right-handedness, also known as dexterality, is the most common type of handedness, covering up to 90% of the world's population. This is followed by left-handedness, with around 10% of the population. Archaeological evidence has shown that it has been this way for as long as 500,000 years, with about 10% of human remains showing the associated differences in arm length, bone density, and ancient tools for left-handed use. Handedness and the brain. Handedness represents a form of functional hemispheric asymmetries. Control of the hands is contralateral, such as the right hand is under left hemisphere control and the left hand is under right hemisphere control. This can be traced back to the work of Paul Broca, a 19th century neurologist who hypothesized an association between neural control for language and an individual's hand preference. Clinical observations of language impairment caused by left hemisphere damage, in combination with knowledge of his patient's right-handedness, right-hand preferences, led Broca to suggest that neural control for language mirrored an individual's hand preference. Recent research showed in left-handers the motor cortex in the right side of the brain is bigger and dominant for fine motor behavior such as writing. In contrast, right-handers have a larger area of motor cortex on the left side of the brain, which is dominant for the fine motor behavior. There is many theories on what makes humans left or right-handed. It's unclear whether humans' hand preference is innate or whether it is learned and influenced by the environment around us. The genetics theory doesn't appear to follow the typical pattern of dominant and recessive genetic traits, making the prediction of handedness in children very tricky. Chris McManus and Phil Bryden showed that left-handed children are more likely to be born to left-handed parents than right-handed parents. The study indicated that about 9% of the children of two right-handed parents are likely to be left-handed, about 19% of children of one left-handed and one right-handed parent, and about 26% of the children of two left-handed parents. A genetic model known as the right shift theory was initially developed by Murray and Annette. The theory suggests a hypothetical RS plus gene that develops the motor cortex and speech processing system of the left side of the brain, leading to a preference for the right side of the body, a right shift. The other form of this gene, known as the RS minus, carried by the left-handers, does not cause a left shift, but rather is indifferent to the direction of both language and motor dominance. According to this theory, there is no gene for left-handedness as such, a mere absence or presence of gene for the right-handedness. Another theory is the social and environmental theory. There is always a certain amount of societal pressure to conform to the norms, behaviours and cultural conventions of the majority. Since most people are right-handed, this may lead parents or teachers to teach and encourage children to be right-handed, leading to dominance of the right-handedness. Left-handedness is in developed Western countries, such as Western Europe and North America, it's around 12%. However, in more formal cultures that stress conformity, the rates tend to be much lower. For example, Korea's population has just 2% of left-handers, and Japan with 3%, which reflects their discouragement towards it. Handedness and footedness in sport. Lothing, Hageman and Strauss found when looking at interactive sports, left-handed and footed players are found with disproportionately more frequency, around 13 to 25% compared to roughly 10% in the general population. Some believe that being left-handed presents an advantage for athletes, as they are ranked more often on top athletes' lists than statistics would suggest. Lothing conducted a study and collected statistics on the top 100 left-handed athletes in 6 major sports, including tennis, table tennis, squash, cricket, baseball and badminton. He reported that he found a pattern in which sports with short time constraints, lefties appeared to excel. He found that just 9% of the top 100 players in slow time response sports, such as squash, were left-handed. In contrast, 30% of top players in sports like baseball, mainly for pitchers, were lefties. Table tennis, which is possibly the fastest competitive sport of all, stood out as he reported that 26% of top male players are lefties. So why is there an overrepresentation in interactive sport? Researchers stated that there are essentially two possible hypotheses to explain the overrepresentation in interactive sport. These include innate superiority and negative frequency hypothesis. Innate superiority suggests that left-handed footed players have generally more advantage over right-handers due to a better neurophysiological predispositions. Researchers have supported this with findings that found that spatiotemporal visual perception areas, which is required for attention, is located in the right hemisphere, which is also the side controlling the left hand. Moreover, it has been supported with research that stated that the left hand has faster reaction time even among the right-handed people. It has also been shown that the left-handers' brains are more symmetrical with larger and more efficient connections, so they are better at processing information across the two sides of the brain, supporting the idea that left-handers display better performance in some certain skills compared to right-handers. Negative frequency hypothesis. The hypothesis is stated that because left-handers are a minority to begin with, both left and right-handers encounter and practice against right-handers more frequently. So when they face each other in competition, the left-handers will be better prepared and the right-handed opponents will have less experience with the left-handed opponent and will be thrown off. This results with a disadvantage to develop a tactical approach for the right-handed and footed players. Hageman conducted a study that supports this hypothesis. He used 54 left-handed and 54 right-handed tennis players with different experience levels, expert, intermediate and novice, in his study. He wanted to see whether the greater frequency of tennis matches with right-handed opponents make it possible to discriminate the stroke movements of right-handed players more precisely. The results show that all three groups were better at predicting the direction of strokes by right-handed players. This supports the hypothesis that the overrepresentation of left-handers is partly due to perceptual frequency effects. Similar results were also observed among volleyball players, supporting the negative frequency hypothesis. Loffing et al. Had volleyball players to predict shot directions of left and right-handed players' attacks in a video-based anticipation task. It showed that the outcome of left-handed players' actions was significantly less accurately predicted compared to right-handed players' attacks. Future research. It is still unclear why only roughly 10% of the human population is left-handed, and more research is needed in the future to find the cause. Recent studies have made progress in discovering new concepts and ideas that can be looked at further. For example, a study published in 2017 found that the right or left-handedness may be determined by gene activity in the spinal cord, which was asymmetrical while you are in the womb, and could be what causes a person to be left or right-handed. The researchers found that while the fetus is growing in the womb, up until about 15 weeks, the motor cortex and the spinal cord are not yet connected. But right or left-handedness has already been determined. Therefore, the fetus can already start movements and choose a favourite hand before the brain started controlling the body. Between 8 and 12 weeks, researchers also found significant differences in the left and right segments of the spinal cord that control arm and leg movement. They concluded that the asymmetrical nature of the spinal cord could be down to epigenetics, or how organisms are affected by changes in their gene expression, rather than in genes themselves. These changes are often brought about by environmental influences and can affect how a baby grows. Therefore, future research could look further into how environmental factors could affect gene expression. In another recent study, researchers analysed the genomes of about 400,000 people in the UK, and of these, about 38,000 were left-handed. The researchers looked for differences in the DNA of left versus right-handers, and they identified 4 genetic markers associated to being left-handed. 3 of these markers were located in genes that provided instructions for making proteins involved in brain development and structure. However, a large-scale twin study analysed handedness in twins and their families in more than 25,000 Australian and Dutch families. They found that only about 25% of the individual variants in handedness can be explained by genes, while 75% are determined by environmental influences. The environmental influences are currently not fully understood, but parental instructions, observational learning, and cultural pressures have been suggested. Therefore, in future research, is it more beneficial to focus on the social and environmental factors? Overall, as things stand, the answer to what determines left or right-handedness and why left-handed are in the minority remains still very unclear. My reference list.